Good evening. Welcome to Elyria City Council, October 4th, 2021 meeting. At this time, I'd like to have a moment of reflective silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, Mr. Baird. Again, welcome to Elyria City Council chambers. Council Clerk, can I have a roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Callahan. Here. Mr. Sarah. Here. Mr. Oswald.
Here.
Mr. Baird.
Here.
Mrs. Mitchell.
Here.
Mr. Tollett.
Here.
Mrs. Simmons.
Here.
Mrs. Davis.
Here.
Mrs. Keys.
Here.
Mr. Jesse. Mr. Stewart.
Here.
One absence. Mr. Jesse has an excuse here.
Can I get a motion to get it on the floor?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Mitchell.
Second.
Second by Mr. Baird. Any discussion?
Question.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
One nay.
One nay.
So to start this meeting out, based on the recent findings from Mr. Jesse, we as a council don't condone his actions. We don't condone his behavior. We take these charges very seriously. And, Mr. Jesse will be held accountable for his actions. And moving forward, this is all under investigation from the initial story when this broke, and it's ongoing, and then today was released. So right now, we're letting it go through this process of whatever the necessary steps for, that would be his arraignment, and then ultimately court date. So I just want to make it very clear that this council does not condone his actions, and we will just keep an eye on how this is developing here in the near future. Thank you. Public hearings.
There's none.
Can I get approval of the minutes?
Move approval of the minutes.
Moved by Mr. Baird.
Second.
Second by Mr. Tollett. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Remarks and reports from city officials. Mayor Whitfield.
Thank you, Council President, and I've just decided I'm going to do my State of the City address again. So thank you all. No, I'm joking. No, appreciate y'all being here, listening. No, appreciate it. Looking forward to working together.
Very good. Any questions for the mayor? He did have his updated on the state of the city of where things were at and what what he's looking for to encourage us to kind of continue to build those relationships and to move this city forward. And so we're welcoming and opening the arms in doing that. So is there any questions for those council members who were there to the mayor at this time? Mr. Oswald.
Through you, Mr. President. Mr. Mayor, I apologize. That was my cell phone that went off when you were doing your speech. And you did a brilliant speech, and thank you for enlightening us on what's going on. So keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank y'all for the flowers and for the baby and all. That was a good pickup in my zombie-ness, being able to see those flowers. So thank y'all, and thank you to the law department as well. My wife appreciates it, and that means a lot. So thank you.
Very good. Safety Service Director Brubaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I put at everybody's desk tonight I asked Mr. Jacob from our water plant to put together a short synopsis of some grants that we got, so you can read that at your leisure. I won't take the time to read it to you because you're intelligent enough to do that. But I thought it was very important that you saw these lead grants and these chlorine feeder line grants that we've been able to get and utilize for the residents here in the city. Secondly, the question came up earlier this evening. It was already on my report about the CMG complex. Engineering and the committee, we've gotten it down to 2 qualified applicants to start the design part of that, and we'll be interviewing those next week to get it down to the final one to recommend through the mayor's office to council to go out to bid on that project. And then finally, a week or so ago, we had a very tragic accident on Route 57 where 2 of our residents lost their lives. It was not a scene that you would want to be involved in, but I do want to give credit to our Elyria Police Department and our Elyria Fire Departments for being first responders on scene and dealing with the situation that they dealt with, as well as our partners at Sugar Ridge who towed the vehicles away and our partner with Life Care. But also reach out to our water distribution team, our street department team, and our wastewater team. We had city employees on site dealing with multiple issues there, particularly with the fuel and protecting our waterways from the fuel getting in there and cleaning up debris. And we had probably about 12 or 14 of our city employees that don't typically respond to these type of instances that were around this. And I give them a lot of credit for the response that they did because all of our folks, police, fire, wastewater, distribution, and street department all acted professionally, responsibly, and with dignity in dealing with the event that took place that day. In fact, we had street department folks that were leading the charge and helping direct traffic at 57 and Abbey while police were dealing with the other issues. And that's going to lead on to a referral that you will hear on Wednesday in Utilities and Finance next week in regard to the Centrax program that would not have prevented either the accident there or the accident on 57 where the individual was killed on a motorcycle, but it would help us in our response as well as directing traffic and controlling traffic in those areas. But again, I wanted to give kudos out to our partners and our employees and the response that they had in what can only be described as a tragic incident in our city. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Director Brubaker. Any questions for Director Brubaker? Mr. Tollett.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Brubaker, there are bags set up, and I had a resident call me and ask me, was there a chemical leak at the accident on 57? There are stop bags, I guess, or EPA bags. I'm not sure if you could get into a little detail, and is everything safe now?
Sure. Yes, through you, Mr. Tollett, through President. Those are booms that they put up to stop any flow of diesel fuel. There was a lot of diesel fuel from the truck. We put down about 300 5-gallon buckets of high-dry to help absorb that, and those were put down immediately. I mean, our wastewater team was there very quickly in response to our fire department, who also carries that, that high-dry on their vehicles. But that was put down to prevent anything from flowing into our sewers and those ditches there. And that's what they're there for. They will be removing them probably this week.
Thank you.
Very good. And in saying that, our thoughts and prayers go out to those victims and their families. Our thoughts and prayers are with them. Finance Director Plesky.
Nothing at this time, Mr. President.
Law Director Deary.
Mr. President, I have no report this evening. However, if there are any questions, I'd be happy to address them. And if not tonight, I know each of you know where to find me. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Any questions for the Law Director? Thank you. Elyria Police Department, Chief Whiteley. Elyria Fire Department, Chief Pernesti.
Good evening. First off, I just want to say, thank you for the director for taking the time to mention. Sometimes everybody kind of thinks that police, fire, the medics and life care, we just kind of shrug things off like TV, like it's nothing there. But the accident that took place was probably one of the worst I've seen. I'll leave it at that. But always think of us. Think of when you see a police officer, when you see a firefighter, that the things that they see, not to sound cliche, they stick with you for the rest of your life. And, so just always remember that. With that, my report, I have Mr. Dave Richards with me. He is the CEO of Life Care. And just a little background on why he is here tonight. I've kind of led a little, since I became the chief in August, about our call volume. Our call volume is through the roof as far as what we've had in the past for EMS and emergencies and just traumas, like on 57. They've been at a rise. And I also want to give you a real quick, before I turn it over to him, a little quick background on EMS in the city of Elyria. The fire department has been responding on emergency medical service calls since the 1930s. It's just evolved to where now, you know, it's an everyday occurrence. But the fire department, from the time of funeral run ambulance services, has played a role. So that is something that is not new. The service that the residents have now is second to none as far as being able to deliver, whether the medic says life care on their shirt or has our patch. We can deliver somebody that can start your heart, deliver drugs within minutes. Well, right now, the call volume is such that we are stressed. Our members are stressed, and the members at Life Care are stressed. So I thought it was important that Mr. Richards gives you a little update of what is going on, because I don't see it ending, and I don't believe that Dave sees it ending. So I'm going to give the rest of my time to Mr. Richards.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Richards. If you please could state your name and address for the record.
Sure. Dave Richards, address?
You can use the Cleveland Street address, it's fine.
Oh, 640 Cleveland Street in Elyria. Good evening, everybody. And I think something that speaks volumes, to me at least, is being able to stand here with Chief Pinesti and talk with you together about EMS services in the city of Elyria. I think that speaks a great deal to how we've evolved over the last couple of years and where we're trying to evolve into the future of EMS here in Elyria. I also thought that a picture tells a story rather than having me stand here and cite numbers. I'm a numbers guy by trade, but I think the picture that you have in front of you and that I've provided with a couple of slides is going to give you a state of the EMS world in Lorain County and specifically in Elyria. What I presented to you in this first slide is a trended weekly volume graph, if you will, that kind of shows over the last 2.5 years how the trends have gone. And in 911 services, you get blips up and you get blips down, and it really kind of levels off. That red line that I put in there is the average of what we were running, which is about 460 911 transported patients on average per week. I did circle an area there which represents the summer of 2020, the COVID summer, which was last year, where we saw unprecedented reduction in 911 volumes. This was due to our hospital systems basically closing down their emergency services to the bare minimum, and a community which was afraid to call 911 because they didn't want to leave their house. So you can see where that trend came down to a significantly low level last summer. And ultimately, as things loosened up and the big tents removed themselves from the front of the ERs, people got back to the normal trend of things. However, as we headed into May, we started to see an uptick in volumes over the 400 case per week count. You can see my arrow there on May 23rd. And we have not seen it come down significantly for almost 20 weeks. In fact, we're seeing a rise kind of play out so far now throughout summer and now into fall. We did see a lowering a few weeks ago, but then just last week we saw a record high once again. So the trend continues to head in that direction. You might have heard in the news and even throughout the channels that be that there is really a surge of cases going on in the counties and health systems and the hospitals, not just with COVID-related issues, but also other related issues. And we're seeing that with the call volume, that we're not just getting in calls, but in the actual patients that we're transporting. The second slide that I provided gives you a little bit of a breakdown where we've seen the increases come in call volume. And really how I did this was I took through September 2018, 19, and 20 and did an average of those years for the 9-month period of time, and I compared it to the 9-month period of time in 2021, and you can see some of the upticks in surges that we've seen in cases that we've seen here. I've highlighted a few of those. They're high numbers for us for total falls. We can see that there's more activity going on this summer. A lot of the population has gotten out of hiding and into the world, getting on their skateboards and their bikes, getting into boating and other things of that nature, causing a lot more people to fall down and hurt themselves. So we've seen almost 22% increase in falls. All the things that you see there are represented in increases. The ones I have highlighted are pretty significant. Heart-related problems are up 27%. The medical alarms that we have are 16%. Overdoses, and you hear a lot of talk about that, those are up 30% just this year. Almost 200 more cases this year through September than we've seen on average from the years previous. Psychiatric emergencies are up almost 30%. Sick person, which is kind of a general category, is up almost a third. And then the unresponsive cases is a pretty significant 40% up. We've seen these things. We've made changes to our systems to try to react to them. We've seen an uptick in our requests for mutual aid from surrounding communities when we have surges where we might have 9 or 10 calls going on at one period of time in the city of Elyria. We have surge capacities within our system to try and do that, but only to a point, and that's where we have to rely on neighboring EMS systems to help support when we have those surges. We do the opposite, so when we're called, we actually go to mutual aid calls pretty substantially during this period of time. So, for example, over the weekend, we responded 5 times into Overland from our Amherst facilities, from our Vermilion facilities, and even from Elyria to help with the surges that they had going on at a particular time. We also responded into Grafton 3 times on a single day because they had mutual aid requests for us. So we've seen a lot more from us because we do almost 2/3 of the 911 volume in Lorain County. So when the surges happen, that's when we have to ask for the help. And we've seen a significant uptick in our mutual aid ask as well as our mutual aid gives. So I think that that was important for me to make sure that you understand that when we look at that first graph that we have, that the trend that we're seeing, we're trying to make some adjustments to by getting more people into our system and more wheels out on the road to be able to help with those types of surges. We've also started to work together, Chief Pernesti and myself, to create a better system. How do we deploy resources better? How do we communicate better? Just recently, we got Chief Pernesti involved into our paging system where he can actually get real-time pages from our system to be able to see what's going on. And that comes directly from our CAD 911 system to him. That's a way for us to communicate better. We've even talked about collaborations on how we can deploy resources better, and we have a few meetings coming up to be able to do that. So we're thinking progressively. We're thinking that those trends aren't going to come down. We hope they do, but if they don't, we want to be prepared for that. So we're trying to think outside the box. The other thing that LifeCare did, we took part in a pilot program where we're actually doing telemedicine in the back of our ambulances now. So this is where we show up on a call. We actually bring a physician into the care of the patient right on scene. It gives us an opportunity to actually treat the patient there without having to go to a very busy ER where sometimes we're waiting, where sometimes they don't have beds, where sometimes they're on diversion, where EMH is not taking patients and we have to take them to Lorain, or we have to take them to St. John's. So we're being able to do real-time medicine in the back of our ambulances with telehealth and through a partnership that we're doing with the CMS and Metro Health System. So that's a pretty exciting program. We're only 4 in the state of Ohio that's doing that. We're only 1 of 200 that's doing it in all of the United States. So I'm pretty proud of that program. And it goes on for the next 4 years. So we've invested some capital and resources to make that happen. So we're doing some different things, and we're trying to manage what's going on. With that, I guess I could take questions. I don't know if that's appropriate.
Sure, yeah, well, we'll open it there. I did have a conversation with Mr. Richards on Saturday, he's basically explaining to what he's explained to you, and it was a very interesting conversation. It's a hope that we can kind of come together as a administration and with Life Care to kind of continue to build on these relationships, and the teleconferencing is just incredible. Just the advancement that is over and through there. So it's all the state-of-the-art equipment and everything like that. So with that being said, Mr. Tolet?
Through you, Mr. President, I would ask Chief Pernesti if he could just touch on real quick your call log that you showed me the other night and how it mirrors this growth as well.
Well, probably the biggest thing is that the number of calls that are being generated for, people nowadays are calling 911 for just about everything. And 33 years ago, I showed Councilman Tolet that, we were at around 1,400 runs a year. So that is 1,400 times the fire department rolled out the door on some sort of emergency. Now we're going to be close to 5,000. And that's a lot for a fire department that also does not transport. But the call volume is going up. We've also taken on more responsibility with paramedics. And we are truly bringing the old TV program, Emergency, to the streets of Elyria. I have a firefighter paramedic available to your front door, providing care either right before a squad arrives or in conjunction with Life Care. So the call volume has increased tremendously, and it's not going away. It just isn't going to go away. We have an entire generation of citizens, not just in Elyria, but everywhere, that when they need help, they're pulling out their cell phone and calling 911. Where maybe 30, 40 years ago, if a child, you had a cough, your kid was having trouble breathing, you called Dr. Moore in Elyria. Okay, well, now you're calling 911. And that's us.
Mr. Serra?
Through you, Mr. President. So listening to the mutual aid numbers, this does not sound like it's something unique just to Elyria. The other surrounding areas are experiencing the same?
Absolutely. In fact, you can go to police departments and or emergency rooms and actually ask the same question about how the volume has basically overloaded systems and beds, capacities, and diversionary tactics that the hospitals are going through. The domestic violences are up, and that causes bad things to happen. And you can read about those in the paper almost every day. And we at Life Care have been in existence for 36 years, and we've always given our services to anybody that asks. In this particular environment, we've asked more than we've probably had historically, but it is an unprecedented number that we've seen that is not going down. So we've made changes. We've already hired 20 people in the last 2 months, which is important for us. We're getting them up and going. We've deployed now in 2 locations in Elyria, not just in the central location on West Avenue, but we also do it on our Cleveland Street offices, so we have a dual response area. We've also added a individual command car 24 hours a day. We used to do it 12, now we do it 24 to give ourselves an extra resource to try to mitigate some of this. So we don't just stand still when these type of changes happen. I was hopeful at the beginning of the summer it was going to be a quick thing and then come back down, but as it sustained itself, we have to start to think a little bit more aggressively and progressively to how we do this.
Thank you. Mr. Richards, I don't know if I asked you this on Saturday or if you had it in your remarks, but down in the basement over at 620, they used to have classes in the training. Do you still offer that?
We sure do. In fact, we have CPR every second Wednesday. We give CPR classes. We just did it for, I think it was a physician office in Lorain, came over and brought 12 people and we gave it to them. We do all our internal training for all of our paramedics and EMTs for them to remain certified. We didn't reopen our EMT and paramedic classes because we actually did a partnership with LCCC for their programs, which actually ended up being a work study and apprenticeship program where our people can go and get their education there through grants and through state fundings to get them to progress from, well, the way we do it is wheelchair driver to an EMT to a paramedic. So we actually invest in their career path for them. We even have nurses right now, people that have gone to nursing school through LCC to be able to progress them further. And we're looking at further advancing our care into the critical care aspect of EMS, which is another level that we can get to.
Right. Any other questions for Mr. Richards at this time? Well, we thank you for coming up, and the concerns are here that they're real, and we need to kind of look into this, and we look forward to those continued dialogues and make sure that if we can come up with some type of a partnership like we're trying to establish here and continue on with that. So if you have hard copies of it, or we can get it to the clerk's office, we can give it to the council members so that way they can kind of, revisit this. Thank you, Mr. Richard. Is there any other questions for Chief Pernesti while he's up in regards to anything?
I do have, he was actually probably on a call, that's why he's a little late. My officer that is in charge of the EMS program, he'll be here after the council. I'll bring him up, introduce you, Lieutenant Brett Bevan. But if you have any questions, anything, he's the one that helps us as far as coordinating our training and getting our crews up to speed.
Very good, very good. Thank you. Assistant Safety Service Director Calvert. Any questions for Ms. Calvert? Thank you. Assistant Safety Service Director Mr. Williams.
Have a brief update on the status of the body camera initiative. The first one is when I spoke with you all last time, there had just been a grant released that we were looking at pursuing. I attended a webinar on that subject matter, and there was a $5 million release for this year for 2021 and an additional $5 million that will be released on 2022. Due to the lateness of this announcement, many departments will not be able to apply simply because you have to have all of the details, all of the budget, everything finalized before you can do so. However, it was shared with us that we will be able to, they will open that back up, but they will not be waiting until October of next year. It'll happen sooner. All those things are just a little bit behind the 8 ball, so we expect that we will be applying for those grant funds. They are prioritizing communities who are just instigating body cams. So we will be in that higher priority range. So we'll keep you updated on that. But we do anticipate applying for that. And just in terms of the current status, we have met with our general committee, which I think I shared with you all before. And that meeting went well. We've had one subcommittee since then with the Safety Service Director Office and the police. At that time, right now we're reviewing some potential vendors. Sergeant Buckway has reached out to some of those, and we expect for a full committee meeting in October that they will be presenting at least 3 of those vendors. We're excited. We think the progress, we initially put about a year, 12-month to 18-month window on this. We think that could be accelerated. We expect that we will have that meeting in October with those vendors. And then in November, we'll be reviewing those, looking at the referral process and selection process. We hope to have a vendor identified by the end of this calendar year and be ready to present that to council on the updates and move forward with that vendor. We're hoping that we can avoid this bid process by having the vendor on the state list approved, and that would help expedite the process. We expect that at the December council meeting, we'll be able to give you kind of a final update. The companies that we have looked at that we think are viable options for us. Again, Sergeant Buckway, Captain Pelko, and Captain Hammonds have been instrumental in this part of it. We've kind of subbed ourselves up a little bit where on certain issues, there are a few departments working together. The law department is initiating and driving the whole policy side of this. Again, so with these departments doing the individual work, we expect that again by December, we have identified a vendor, and then we'll pursue that process. The mayor is very excited and really wants to accelerate our process. We anticipate we may have some challenges maybe in terms of availability of equipment, things that we aren't aware of yet. Once we know those through a prospective vendor, we'll be able to give you a more firm timeline on implementation. Through the work of IT and the communication department, we'll have a better idea of what it's going to look like on the installation of this equipment to our vehicles, outfitting our stations with all of the technology needed to do the upload of data in those pieces. So again, we'll keep you updated. I can answer any questions you may have about our process thus far.
Any questions for Mr. Williams to date? All right, Mr. Williams, thank you. Yes, please keep us informed on how things are progressing.
Thank you.
City Engineer, Mr. Schneider.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to update council on the street resurfacing. The contractor for phase one did start today, milling up on the north side on North Pasadena, and I believe he went over to Hartford and a few other locations up there. We'll be doing this week as well. Phase two of the street resurfacing will start next Monday. So the contractor has told us as of right now he plans to be out there on Monday to start milling that phase as well. So we should see a lot of activity out there the next month as far as asphalt going down. That's the only update I have.
Excuse me. Will we be able to get all the streets done, John? I guess is the question since it's so late in the season.
Because it's broken up, there's a better chance. That's one of the reasons why we break it up. But it's all about labor, and obviously, as discussed earlier, there is a labor shortage in the United States right now. The contractor has assured us that he does plan on finishing the roads this year, but also you always have to throw in weather as well. So as of right now, yes, but is it a guarantee? No.
Okay. Mr. Oswald.
Through you, Mr. President, I know we've had dozens of conversations on where North Pasadena is getting paved, and I got another question, a couple of them from some people that live in the area. We had discussed that it was going down Berkshire past Randall to Nash, and I thought we had discussed at one time that to the right, there's a little triangle that turns kind of into Randall. It's really in bad shape. You could get lost in that. I don't know, is that going to get done, or is that something, they're over there now, can that be taken care of, or do you know where I'm talking about?
I don't know what you're talking. I mean, I know the area. I know the little triangles they have there and the various complexities of the area. I will have to talk with the project manager who put together the plans for us and see what we can do.
I mean, while they're over there, that'd be great, so we don't have to come back, because I know it would be on the list, and it's a small area, and then, of course, you know how hard it is to just get small spots done. So yeah. I just wanted to bring that up, and maybe I'll touch base with you and see where we're at. Thank you.
Okay. If there's a follow-up, Mr. Oswald, you can have it with you just to make sure there's an understanding of the area you're speaking to. Any other questions for Engineer Schneider? Very good. Human Resources Director, Ms. Jean Yousefi. Any questions for Ms. Yousefi at this time? All right, very good. Thank you. President's referrals and remonstrances. Item number 1, community development. Item number 2, community development. Item number 3, community development and finance. Item number 4, community development and finance. Item number 5, item number 5, finance. Item number 6, finance. Item number 7, finance, utilities, safety and environment committees. Item number 8, finance committee and utility, safety and environment. Item number 9, finance committee, utility, safety and environment committees. Items 10 through 14 received and placed on file in the clerk's office. Petitions and remonstrances from council members.
There are none.
Petitions and remonstrances from the lobby.
We have 3. Mark and Becky Haller, 410 Briar Lake Drive. Subject is flooding.
Please come on up. Please state your name and address for the record.
backing up. Anytime we get in excess of 2 inches of rain in a short amount of time. That's all about this. Project that is in process. That's going to take a while. Through the city, a quick fix, which we understand. We also informed us, sanitary sewer shouldn't really be filling with water when we get this kind of rain. That's the purpose of our storm. The issue is that we have homeowners that have their downspouts that are illegally dumping into the sanitary sewers. That's what's causing the excess amounts of water to, the sanitary sewers aren't made to handle. We would like to see then have the city smoke the sanitary sewers, find out, which people, homeowners are doing this to help alleviate all this water, because our lower level is flooded up twice in the last 15 months. I installed a bathroom valve. I had to take care of it. Well, I didn't put it close enough to the street, so now we get that extra rain, and my line backed up, and it takes hours before we're able to use the bathroom facilities in our lower level. It's living. So it's a real inconvenience. So if doing something like as easy as that, smoking the line to find out, who actually is contributing to this excess daily of water would be a partial fix until the project can, be implemented.
Mr. Haller, first of all, what is your address again?
410 Briar Lake.
410. And then Engineer Schneider is here. Maybe he can meet with you after you are done with your comments or questions in regards to that. I know that is a situation, we've talked about over really in unprecedented times over the last 2 to 3 years with all this heavy rains that we've had, that this is causing a problem. And it's been a history over on the north side. We're not getting away from that. And we're trying to, there's possibilities with this infrastructure bill, or if that does not come to light, maybe it's these opportunities with these ARP funds. But to your point, that does take time, and there's a plan. But I think if you would meet with Engineer Schneider at the end of the meeting, just to kind of confirm what Mr. Oswald's telling you, and if there's opportunities that we can kind of help alleviate in the short term so that you don't run into this issue again. All right? Thank you.
Mr. Jeff Baxter, 160 Burns Road, leadership, council leadership.
Mr. Baxter, if you please could state your name and address for the record. Thanks, Mr. Baxter. I couldn't disagree with you more. The leadership in this council over the years has been incredible. And again, when I started this conversation about Mr. Jesse, we do not condone his actions, we do not condone his behavior, and we take these allegations and what is being going for his arraignment very seriously, these civil. And I'll take exception to saying that we're lacking leadership in that. We're letting it run its course, and this is the proof of running through the legal system. So, thank you.
Michael Dowd, 1173 North Ridge Road. Bridgepoint Commons, subject.
Maybe your mic is not on, Mr. Dowd. If there's a green button down below that kind of activates the mic.
Oh, here we go. Thanks.
And it might be easier if, I know we're trying to instill the masks, but if it's easier for you to take it off a little bit so that we can understand what you're saying, so the community can too as well.
Thank you. My name is Michael Dowd. I am the Executive Director for the Lorain County Mental Health Addiction and Recovery Services Board. I am here this evening to thank the City of Elyria for embracing its first permanent supportive housing project on Bridge Street. Permanent supported housing, 62 units. Permanent supported housing is a evidence-based practice that is able to provide housing and support services to those who are unstably housed with a disabling condition. We had a tour a couple of weeks ago. We have representatives from the mayor's office present, along with Mayor Jack Bradley, a couple of judges, representatives from the foundations to do a tour of the project, and it is scheduled to open end of December. Lease up, hopefully to be completed by February, and we hope to have discussions with a developer to see a similar project developed in the city of Lorain. So I'm here to thank the city of Elyria for stepping forward, embracing this evidence-based practice in the community, and we're excited about seeing future development for the most disadvantaged in the community. I'm here to answer any questions about Bridgepoint Commons.
Ms. Davis.
Through you, Mr. President. Is this housing only for Elyria, Lorain County, or is in Cuyahoga County or the surrounding areas?
This project is targeted for the residents of Lorain County. There is a wait list through the continuum of care, which is managed by Catholic Charities. So the COC will work off that wait list for occupancy for Bridgepoint Commons. So it's targeted for residents of Lorain County only.
Thank you.
I'll let the mayor kind of weigh in on this, but, as far as with the city of Elyria and their residents, would that be the first individuals to come in first if there's
So through you, Council President, I had this conversation with some of the representatives that do the intake portion, and I would appreciate if council could echo and support my sentiment, what I think I hear you saying as well, is to prioritize Elyria residents on this list. A part of the support for doing this was to help address the folks who are chronically homeless walking around the city of Elyria. Not necessarily we want other folks in other cities to be supported, of course, but our reason for pushing this forward was because we saw people downtown who were walking around, needing support, needing help. And one of the pieces a piece of feedback I had shared with the folks was, the intake portion of this, it's, so in order to get into this continuum of care, there's not a walk-in location in Elyria where you can get that access. In Lorain, you have Catholic Charities where folks know they can just walk up there, sign up, and get connected. In Elyria, we don't have that sort of walk-up sign-up. So Elyria folks who are struggling are at a disadvantage to even get in that waiting list. So we've asked that you all find a way to prioritize folks who are in Elyria because of that deficiency in the system that we have right now.
And I would just add that on that wait list, majority of individuals' last known residency are in the city of Elyria or the city of Lorain.
Yeah, and I thought when this project was taken off, that was probably one of the initial conversations, is that when this was going to be built or developed over and through here, the city of Elyria residents would be coming first in this area. So I guess that's hopefully that we can kind of work through that. Is there any other questions in regards to the building? I don't know, did you mention as far as completion? Did you mention that in your comments?
Yeah, it's scheduled to begin lease up end of December.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, very good. Mr. Oswald, did you have a question?
Well, I just make a comment. I went to a few meetings that you had before you got this started or wanted to do this plan, and of course there was a lot of opposition about it going where it did, whether or not it was just a halfway house for people and we were just, housing. Your company assured us that we've done these projects in the past. They've worked very well. They work with substance abuse counselors and everything else. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that they do as good a job as what they said. Supposedly check in, check out, drug tests, all that, because, being positive, this could work really good. So that's what I'm hopeful, and I'm hoping that it works out. So thank you very much.
Very good. Very good, thank you. Thank you for coming up and informing us.
Petitions from the lobby?
Reports of standing and special committees.
There are none.
Resolutions, first reading.
There are none.
Resolutions, second reading.
There are none.
Resolutions, third reading.
There are none.
Ordinances, first reading.
Sponsored by Community Development. An ordinance accepting the dedication of certain lands, easements, and rights of way for the installation of streets and utilities is provided for in the final plat of Harvest Meadows Subdivision Number 1.
Mr. Callahan.
Mr. President, I move that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second by Ms. Mitchell. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2021-149. Sponsored by Community Development and Finance. An ordinance approving an application for the Downtown Facade Improvement Program created by Ordinance 2019-19 for improvements at 353, 355, 357, 359, and 361 Broad Street, Elyria, Ohio.
Mr. Callahan.
Mr. President, I move that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2021-150. Sponsored by Community Development and Finance. An ordinance approving the application for the Downtown Historic Redevelopment Grant Program created by Ordinance 2021-31 for improvements at 353, 355, 357, 359, and 361 Broad Street, Elyria, Ohio.
Mr. Callahan.
Mr. President, I move that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second. Second by Mr. Todd. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2021-151. Sponsored by Community Development and Finance. An ordinance waiving the program boundary requirements and approving the application for the Downtown Facade Improvement Program created by Ordinance 2019-19 for improvements at 104th Street, Elyria, Ohio.
Mr. Callahan.
Mr. President, I move that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second by Ms. Simmons. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2021-152. Sponsored by Finance, an ordinance amending ordinance number 2021-50, known as the 2021 Permanent Appropriations Ordinance, to change funds in various accounts.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I move that you pass this ordinance on its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second.
Second by Mr. Baird. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2021-153. Sponsored by Finance, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract to purchase Scott X3 Pro self-contained breathing apparatuses, SCBA's, cylinders, and fill station for Elyria Fire Department through the State of Ohio Purchasing Program or equivalent program and declare an emergency.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Mr. Baird. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2021-154. Sponsored by Finance, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract to purchase 22 rear-loading garbage trucks for the sanitation department through the Ohio State Purchasing Program or equivalent program and declare an emergency.
Mr. Tolet.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed in its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2021-155. Sponsored by Finance, Utilities, Safety, and Environment. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement for the lease or purchase of a 2021 TruVac Paradigm Hydro excavating truck through the Ohio State Purchasing Program for the Water Distribution Department and declare an emergency.
Ms. Mitchell?
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Ms. Simmons. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2021-156. That's all ordinances first reading.
Second reading.
There are none.
Ordinance's third reading.
There are none.
Committee calls.
Community Development requests the Law Director, Safety Service Director, Building Inspector, and Engineer on Tuesday, 10/12 at 6 p.m. All items referred to council chambers. Joint CD Finance requests the Mayor, Law Director, Finance Director, Safety Service Director, and Engineer on Tuesday, 10/12/21, beginning at 6 p.m. All items referred in the council chambers. Finance requests the Mayor, Law Director, Finance Director, Safety Service Director, and Engineer on 10/12/21, immediately following the joint. All items referred in the council chambers. Utility Safety Environment requests the Law Director, Safety Service Director, and Engineer on Wednesday, 10/6, beginning at 6 p.m. All items referred, council chambers. And Strategic Planning requests the Mayor, Safety Service Director, Auditor, and Solicitor on Monday, 10/18, immediately following full council meetings. All items referred, council chambers. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Miscellaneous and unfinished business? No one has anything? Mr. Baird?
Hearing no further business, I move we adjourn.
Second. Moved by Mr. Baird, second by Mr. Sayre. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Meeting is adjourned.
Oh, sorry, you say that, I'm saying.
Again, forgive me, council members, Mr. Bevan is here if you need to ask about the EMS.